Marinero, the Sick Podcast, and it's fun to talk about the Montreal Canadiens today. Why? Because I said a win would be nice, but the first thing I want really is entertaining hockey. The Canadiens did both last night, beating the Detroit Red Wings by a score of 6-1 and an entertaining hockey game on a Saturday night at the Bell Center. Joining me today, Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette and HockeyInsideOut.com. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, Tony. That was a fun night at the Bell Center last night.
It was
something I think the Canadiens obviously needed, the fans needed, and the city needed. That building's been empty for so long, players playing in front of empty arenas or near empty arenas in the playoffs. And it was fun last night. Right from the opening minute, the fans were into it with Go Habs, Go chants. They had the Ole, Ole. They were singing na, na, hey, hey, goodbye at the end. They even had the wave going. And went for about 5 minutes. So it was a really fun atmosphere, and it's exactly what this team needed before going out in the West Coast for a 4-game road trip.
Ça sent la coupe, Stu. Ça sent la coupe.
Well, it made me wonder, sitting there in the press box last night, made me wonder, boy, what a shame it was that the Habs get to the Stanley Cup final on the year when there's nobody in the building. Because the atmosphere last night, it would have been 10 times that if it had been the Stanley Cup final or any other game in the playoffs for that matter.
It's a Sick Podcast. The show's brought to you by Essentia, the world's only natural memory foam mattress. Go to myessentia.com/sickpod and use code SICKPOD for a free pillow with your purchase. Essentia, beyond organic sleep. Speaking of sleep, the offense was dormant up until last night. It finally woke up, Stu. It finally woke up.
Yeah, guys were really nervous. That expression, squeezing the stick, you could tell it. Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki looked really, really nervous on the ice, the way they were playing. And, they got a power play goal, which is, Mike Hoffman, that's what they signed him for, to score power play goals. And that was a huge one. It sort of turned the momentum, got them going, got them feeling a little bit better about themselves. And then, Mathieu Perreault, what a story that was last night. Kid who grew up in Drummondville, still calls Drummondville home in the offseason.
Yeah.
He had a hat trick at the Forum. And hear the fans chanting Perreault, Perreault. That's probably the first time that name's been chanted in a Montreal hockey arena since Gilbert Perreault was playing for the Junior Canadiens. It was a special night for the Canadiens, and what a night for Mathieu Perreault. And it's hard not to like him when you're interviewing him and talking with him. We were asking him the other day. He came the day after Marc Bergevin had his unexpected session with the media. The next day, Perreault was asked about it. And he says, "Oh, when did he do that? Today?" Like, he didn't even know he had spoken. And when we asked him why, he says, "Well, I got 3 kids at home. He's got a 5-year-old and 4-year-old twins born within 19 months of each other." So, Tony, you're a dad. You can imagine how busy his house must be. So in a way, that's a blessing because he's not really aware of the outside noise going on, especially when the team was struggling. So I was really happy for him last night. And God chez nous, hat trick at the Bell Center. I mean, a night he'll never forget. And I don't think fans that were at the building will ever forget it either. I have a friend who came in from Toronto for the game with his son, paid $350 per ticket. Before the game, I met him for dinner. He was like, "Oh, man, I wish I hadn't spent the money. Should I wear a paper bag on my head?"
Wow.
But his son who lives in Toronto, is in grade 7, a huge Habs fan, gets teased about it in Toronto. And when his friends tease him, he told me he just says 3-1 to shut them up.
Yeah.
But, it's a night I'm sure the kid will never forget either. It was just a special night at the Bell Center. It'd been a long time.
It really was. Listen, after everything we said about Perreault, and even a guy like me who tends to have fun with the whole gut chez nous when the Canadiens were 0-5 after 5 games, because, of course, I really do believe that the Montreal Canadiens tried to appease the media by bringing in as many gut chez nous as they did. As you know, last year was an embarrassing season for them when they had that one game where they didn't have a Quebecer in the lineup. I mean, it caused the scandale au Québec, and they wanted to avoid that this year, la grosse controverse. And they wanted to avoid it. And I thought that Perreault looked slow prior to last night. But this word that comes up in hockey all the time, right, Stu? The word confidence. And sometimes once you score your first goal, all of a sudden you start to skate faster, or you look like you're skating faster. And once Perreault scored his first goal last night, which was a goal that was probably a nail in the coffin goal if it hadn't happened already, which put the Canadiens up by a score of 4-1. There's a puck that goes off a Detroit player's skate in the neutral zone. It turns over. It goes the other way. Mathieu Perreault down the left wing. A real good, nice, quick wrist shot that puts the Canadiens up by a score of 4-1. He was flying after that. And you're right. We've been looking for some exciting moments in this regular season and last regular season. And this was one of the most fun regular season games at the Bell Center because a guy who I believe grew up in Drummondville picked up a hat trick, 3 straight goals on top of that, with the crowd cheering his name. He's had a very good long career, Matthew Perreault. I will bet you that when all is said and done, that is the one game that he'll probably remember more than any other game for his entire career.
Well, he said he scored 4 goals his first season in Winnipeg, but
It's
nobody was chanting his name, and it wasn't on the home ice. And as he said, he's asked, you dream about playing in the NHL one day. You dream about maybe playing for the Canadiens, but you never dream about scoring 3 goals at the Bell Center is almost too much to believe. I know you were saying about the gars de chez nous and appeasing the media. I think it's more Jeff Molson appeasing his fan base. I mean, you got to realize that probably 75% of the Canadiens fan base, especially in the province of Quebec, are francophones, and they want to have players on the team that they feel represent them. And yeah, I mean, they played last season.
If I can interrupt, that's a great point that you just made, but I'm not so sure they feel the necessity to appease the fan base if the media doesn't come out with the headlines and the articles that they come out, right?
It's the chicken before the egg thing too. But I mean,
I hear you.
You live in the Montreal bubble, but you go outside of Montreal and other areas of Quebec. The Canadiens are much, much more than just a hockey team to Quebecers. They're almost a religion, right?
An institution.
It's an institution, and the Flying Frenchman. There's a connection there with the community, the French community in Quebec, that is unique in the world, if not North America, definitely, and probably a little bit unique in the world. So you go back at when the Canadiens won their last Stanley Cups, they had a lot of French players on the team. And a case like last night, I think some of the local guys get more fired up when they play here. The problem with the Canadiens is they get a lot of these francophone guys at the end of their careers when they're almost done. But you mentioned Mathieu Perreault. 2000, he was a MVP in the Quebec Junior League one year, big goal scorer, point producer. But when they first signed him as a free agent, he said that he approaches every game in the NHL like he might not be in the lineup the next night. Like every time he's on the ice, he says, I know if I don't play well, I might be a healthy scratch. And he was a healthy scratch with the Canadiens. And he was asked about it after the game last night. And he says, it's part of the game. I don't complain. I just wait for my next opportunity. And the next opportunity I get, I make sure I play hard enough and well enough that they won't put me back there again. So I think he's a good, especially when you have a lot of young guys on the team.
Very likable guy. He's the kind of guy that you would think a coach is not going to have a problem with him,
Yeah, but I think, too, when you have young guys on the team like Caulfield and Suzuki, and when you see a veteran like that handle being a healthy scratch the way he did, okay, now I'm back in the lineup, and I'm going to make sure you can't put me back in the press box again. Rather than getting upset and I don't deserve it, he went out and proved himself. And I remember that quote from when they first signed him as a free agent, and he said that. He said, I approach every game in the NHL like I might not be in the lineup the next game, and I got to play really well. And last night, I mean, as I said, he's a really likable guy.
Yeah.
He talked about the day after the Bergevin press conferences. I didn't see it because I was watching Paw Patrol with my kids. I can tell you all about Paw Patrol if you want. But yeah, likable guy, and provided a big spark there last night. And even before he scored the empty net goal for the hat trick, there was a power play shortly before that, and they were feeding him constantly. You could tell his teammates wanted him to get the hat trick on that power play. Every puck, every play on the power play went to him in the bumper position there to try and score. So that's a really special night at the Bell Center, and a special ending at the end with him being the first star. And Sami Niku, also another new guy in the lineup last night, was the second star, picked up 2 assists.
Yeah, we'll talk about him in just a second. Someone's calling. It's probably him. But anyway, to Matthew Perreault and the Montreal Canadiens. Perreault with his hat trick. The Canadiens score 6. A little Cherry River hard seltzer, only 90 calories, natural flavors, no preservatives. Now available in Quebec grocery stores and at the beer store, even on a Sunday at 12:13 in the afternoon.
It's afternoon, Tony.
That's how good this thing is. All right, okay. Now let's move on. You know who else I was happy for last night, besides the fact that you obviously got to be happy for everyone? A 0-5 start was hell for the Montreal Canadiens, hell for Jeff Molson, hell for Marc Bergevin, hell for Dominic Ducharme, hell for all the players, hell for the fan base. I was happy for Sherratt because it was not his best start again. He picks up yet another penalty. Larkin makes it 1-0. And I'm thinking, my God, Ben Sherratt's taken so many penalties thus far this season. He's clearly hurting without Shea Weber. And then he ties up the game. He's got a pretty good wrist shot. We saw it last year as well on a great pass from Jonathan Drouin. When the Canadiens acquired Jonathan Drouin, I love Drouin's playmaking ability. We haven't always seen it. We saw it last night.
Yeah, and Sherrod, I mean, when he took that penalty, at that point, he had 5 penalties this season, and the Canadians had 4 goals, which is, and they scored 6 seconds into that power play, Detroit did. So, the PK is still a big problem for the Canadians. They gotta fix that. I think they're really missing Philip Deneau on that. But yeah, the pass from Jonathan Drouin was a beauty. And last year when everybody was on Jonathan Drouin when he only had 2 goals, he's never really, go back and look at his stats in junior. He's never been a huge goal scorer. He's more of a playmaker than he is of a goal scorer. He's
Yeah.
got great vision and great hands. And I mean, that was a great pass. And as you said, what a great shot by Ben Sherratt. Picked the corner.
Yeah. It really was. All right. So now Jonathan Drouin, Matthew Perreault, Ben Sherrod, any Canadian, any player in the National Hockey League, NFL going on, any player, any sport, their jerseys, sportbuffshop.com for all of your officially licensed sports apparel and even our sick merchandise. Look at this one today. Bet the house. Use code SICK15 for 15% off on all of their items. By the way, I know I've been on them. I predicted the terrible start, by the way.
Yeah, I did also, Tony. You can go back to the column I wrote. I did too.
I predicted they were going to score a lot of goals last night and destroy the Detroit Red Wings. So I got that one right too. I bet the house.
I didn't predict that one.
I did. Listen, I can understand if people didn't want to because they've had their struggles versus Detroit, but I just thought that this was the opportune moment for them. All right. It also coincided in Christian Dvorak scoring his first goal as a Montreal Canadian. What did you think of his game last night?
It was better. He looked good in training camp, and I think he's still sort of settling in with his new team. It's a big adjustment, coming from Arizona and playing here and new teammates. I think they've kept him with the same line mates, which I think is a good thing. That line keeps looking a little bit better. So he's been good. He hasn't been great, I don't think, in the first, but I mean, you can say that about a whole lot of guys on this team. So, but for him, a big adjustment coming to a new team and coming to he hasn't played in front of an environment like that in Arizona, that's for sure. So I think that, Canadians are on a flight. They're probably at the airport now. In fact, they are at the airport now getting ready. I think they're flying out at 1:00. It's going to be just a good flight to Seattle. Like, there's going to be a good vibe. I mean, imagine how bad it would have been if they lost again last night. So they fly to Seattle. They have a day off tomorrow. The guys will be able to bond a little bit, get to know each other better. And that's something they really weren't able to do so much last season just because of all the COVID protocols. Like, guys couldn't hang out in each other's rooms in the hotel. They weren't allowed. They could only get together at sort of team gatherings for meals and that. So it'll give Dvorak a chance to get to know his teammates better, to know him better. And I think it's perfect timing as far as getting a big win at home and now go on the road. A week and a half on the road, get away from all the noise sort of here and try and figure out what went wrong those first 5 games. And as Dominic Ducharme said last night, he says, we'll be better for what we went through because nobody's going to want to go back and live that experience again. He said, you bring it home with you. You try not to, but you go home and you just can't stop thinking about it and getting out of your head. So Dominic Ducharme probably had his first good night's sleep last night in a long time. And the flight to Seattle today will be a fun one, I think.
Mike Hoffman scored a huge power play goal for him and for the team yesterday. Cole Caulfield had an extra step, I thought. I thought he was buzzing, didn't score. So we'll talk about those two players in just a second. I do have to ask you about one player who looks like he's trying, and it's just not materializing in much right now. Stu Cowan, are you at all, even a little bit, concerned with Brendan Gallagher based on what you saw last year in the playoffs and what you've seen 6 games into the regular season?
A little bit, yeah, because he hasn't scored. I mean, you can never question Brendan Gallagher's effort or compete level.
And obviously, we're not talking about that, right? Because we'll never question
there,
that.
But he had a couple of chances last night, though. The chances are there. He'd be more concerned if he didn't have any chances. And I think, like so many goal scorers, when he gets one, he'll get more. I'm not so concerned about him right now. I'm more concerned as that contract that he signed goes on. And Brendan Gallagher has earned every single dollar the Canadians have ever paid him, and he will continue to earn every single dollar they ever pay him. But there's a lot of wear and tear in that body. And the thing with Brendan Gallagher, he could be playing with a broken leg and he'd tell you he's fine. He's 100%. He'll never complain. He'll never whine about anything. So it's too. Am I concerned? Yeah, because he's a goal scorer and he hasn't scored. But it's early. It's 6 games in. If we get 10 games in and he still hasn't scored, I think the first 10 games of the season are a feeling out process for so many different reasons. Don't forget, he started this season on the 3rd line. He lost. They're talking about an adjustment for Dvorak. Gallagher's lost two-thirds of the line he played on. He played for so long with Tatar and Danault. This is an adjustment for him also. So a little concerned. But
I'm glad you brought up the contract, and I'm going to tell you why. Last episode, I believe it was, I said to your colleague Brendan Kelly that and by the way, I know that $6.1 million is too much for Kotkaniemi, right? I'm not stupid either. But I said to Brendan, I said I would have rather, once we were talking contracts, right? If you give me the choice, I would rather give Kotkaniemi $6.1 million for 1 year than Brendan Gallagher $6.5 million for 6 years. Now, I know that Gallagher has proven a lot more. I know that he's a heart and soul guy, and I know that he works very, very hard. I understand all of that, right? I'm not dumb. But it's looking at that contract in year 4, year 5, year 6. If you give Kotkaniemi 1 year, $6.1 million, and you know he's overpaid for sure by at least 100% of that, because he should probably make around 2.5. You're giving him 6.1. So he's more than doubling what he's worth. But if you give him that 1 year and it doesn't pan out, you wash your hands, you let him go. Bye-bye, salut la visite. When you give Brendan Gallagher 6.5 times 6 years, if you're not liking that contract after year 2, you're going to have a really, really hard time moving that in year 3, year 4, year 5, or maybe even year 6. So that's why I said what I said. And it's nice to, well, not nice to hear that you're concerned as well about the long-term contract, but that's my point.
Well, the thing is, though, Tony, in not only hockey, but all pro sports, players are normally paid for what they did in the past. You know, you're paid, you score a 50-goal season or 30-goal seasons in Brendan Gallagher's case, you're rewarded for that when your next contract comes up. So he's, you know, on the other hand, he's been drastically underpaid for the last few seasons. When he was a 30-goal scorer, making, what was it, $3 million, $3 million a year, he was underpaid. And to Brendan Gallagher's credit, I remember asking him at one point in a 30-goal season, do you feel like you're underpaid? Or he says, no, not at all. He says, that contract I signed was more money than I ever thought. You know, I signed my contract. I'm thrilled with it. So it's nice to have an athlete talk that way about it. But he's
nice. Shows a lot of humility. Really, it does.
He's being rewarded for what he did in the past, like so many athletes are. The Suzuki contract is sort of the new wave now we're seeing, where teams are paying, and as you mentioned with Kotkaniemi, teams are now paying guys big money who haven't necessarily proven. You know, Nick Suzuki hasn't proven he's a 30-goal scorer yet. Brendan Gallagher has proven he can score 30 goals. Canadians are now banking on that in the future. So Suzuki's contract, everybody's saying, oh, it's going to look great down the road. And I think it probably will, but it might not. You know, so there's two different ways. The Canadians are banking on Suzuki becoming maybe not a 30-goal scorer, but a center, 25 goals and a lot of assists. They're banking on him doing that. Whereas with Gallagher, they're rewarding him for already having become that. So as I said, you know, Brendan Gallagher, I'll never, like, he earns every single dollar the Canadians have ever paid him. He never takes a night off. He never takes a shift off. And maybe he'll prove us both wrong, Tony. Maybe 4 years from now,
I hope so. Listen,
I hope so too, because I like everything about Brendan Gallagher.
Me too. I mean, he's proven a lot of people wrong over the course of his career. And I like when he was asked about that last year. You continue to play to prove people wrong, and he says, "No, I actually play to prove people right." Yeah. I love that line, by the way. It was pretty cool. I think it was the first time I heard it.
He plays for the people who supported him, not for the people who knocked him down. He doesn't play for that coach who told him you're too small, you'll never make it. He plays for the coach and the family members who told him you're not too small, you will make it. And it is refreshing to hear a guy talk like that. And when Gallagher talks with the media, he speaks from his heart. He really does. And I, as someone who works in the media, I appreciate that so much, because he gives you honest answers, long answers, thoughtful answers. And that's why I've written he's not only the heart and soul of this team, he's the spokesperson for the team. Because Shea Weber doesn't like speaking with the media. I mean, I can't imagine the captain of any other team in the NHL, the team coming out and saying not only his season might be over, but his career might be over, and he hasn't spoken to the media.
Yeah, here's a text that's coming in from Didier Montparnasse. The Suzuki contract has also a potential of a bad investment. That's what Stu was saying. If he doesn't play to his potential, that's why. Listen, I think the better bet would have been a bridge. Maybe a 3-year at 15. I don't know how the negotiations went, if that was something they were going to sign or not. But mind you, what power does the player have? It's either that or they end up sitting out next year and they don't end up getting paid. So I think I would have rather gone that way. I understand the reluctance as well. Maybe they're worried that player gets offer sheeted going forward. I don't think he would. I think the Canadians got offer sheeted for Kotkaniemi because they tried to offer sheet Aho. So what goes around comes around. But anyway, hey, it was nice to see. Go ahead.
The power Suzuki has is that he wants to commit to Montreal. You know, So Kotkaniemi wanted to get out of here, right? He didn't.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Of course.
So now you have Suzuki, who wants to stay here, who has handled the pressure of playing here so well. I wrote a column saying, in a lot of ways, he sort of reminds me of Saku Koivu in that calm demeanor he has, and he seems to just do his thing and not let the outside stuff really bother him. And he's only 21 years old. You got to remember that. It's impressive how mature he is and how, living in the spotlight in Montreal isn't easy for any player.
The contract's going to be a lot of pressure on him, Stu, and that I can't wait to see how he reacts to that.
Yeah, but in the past, when he's played bad or he's had a few bad games, he's always bounced back. And the thing is, he's played his best hockey in the playoffs. So when the games matter the most, he's played his best. And as I said, I think the Canadian. If I'm a betting man, I'm thinking that that's a good contract the Canadians signed for him. I think could even look like a bargain. But nothing's guaranteed in sports. Nothing's guaranteed. You don't know. They're taking a risk that Suzuki will become the player they hope he will become. The same as Carolina's taking a risk. They hope Kotkaniemi will become the player the Canadians hoped he would become when they drafted him 3rd overall. Was there some revenge in it for the Aho opportunity? Yeah, but that wasn't the driving force behind Carolina getting Jesperi Kotkaniemi. They have now it's number 2 and 3 draft picks from that draft on their team. They like the player. They like the life of getting a 21-year-old guy with 3 years of NHL experience under his belt. They wanted the guy, and they're banking on him. They're banking on his future, just like the Canadians are now banking on Suzuki's future. And if the Canadians had banked on Kotkaniemi's future earlier, when he wasn't playing that well, and maybe offered him a 3-year deal at $9 million, $8 to $10 million, he probably would have taken it. He would have taken the security of the 3-year deal if they had gone it maybe early last year when things weren't going so great for him. If they had enough confidence in him that they drafted him 3rd overall, you would think they would have had enough confidence in him to lock him up, as you say, on a bridge deal, but they didn't. And they waited and they got burned by it.
All right. You said before, if you were a betting man, for the first time ever, I'm going to make you play the betting man right here on the Sick Podcast. Are you ready? I'm going to ask you for a prediction. Get ready.
Yep.
It's time for Sick Picks, brought to you by MyBookie.
And you can place your bet on MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag/the-sick-podcast and use code SickPicks to double your deposit. Bet, win, get paid. The Canadians are in Seattle. Their next game versus the expansion Kraken. Release the Kraken. I love their home opener yesterday versus Vancouver, by the way, and the way they did the opening ceremonies. I like Seattle's doing a lot of things right. Do the Canadians pick up their 2nd win in a row? How do you see the game going? Because I have a pick for you. I'd like to hear yours.
Canadians fans probably won't want to hear me say this, but I can see them losing to the Kraken only because it's the first game of a West Coast trip, the time change, everything else. The game's at 10 o'clock at night at Montreal time. It's an adjustment for any team going on the road, a first game on a West Coast road trip. So it's going to be tough for them. It's going to be a tough game for the Canadians. Even though Seattle's an expansion team, Seattle's in front of their home crowd. They lost their home opener last night. So it's going to be tough for the Canadians, I think.
Now that the offense finally got going, I see this, and Seattle's going to come at the Canadians really hard as well. I see another offensive scoring game. So my pick is going to be the over. So Stu Cowan gives you the Seattle Kraken. I give you the over in the hockey game. Scott Friedman via text message says, "Love you, Tony." Thank you very much for the text. I love Tony too. I think he's pretty good at what he does. All right. And I love Stu Cowan. In ending, Cole Caulfield, he was buzzing, but a lot of people are expecting him to put that puck in the net. I think it's coming, and I think he scores in Seattle, to tell you the truth. What do you see?
There was that one shift last night where he got the puck at center ice in his skates, and he sort of kicked it forward, and he made a move. He made a deke on the defenseman who actually fell down and then set up. I think it was Suzuki set up. And Suzuki, that one shift, he had a really nifty play. Suzuki had a really nifty play. And I saw Caulfield playing with that confidence that we saw him play with when he first joined the Canadians last season. When was the last time Cole Caulfield went 6 games in his life without scoring a goal? He's been a goal scorer since he was 5 years old, since he first started playing hockey. So it's something he's not used to.
Maybe in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and you go back and look. Yeah, he might have been 6 games.
Yeah, not in the regular season, because in the regular season, he picked up 4 goals in 10 games.
And we know what he did in Laval, and we know what he did in Wisconsin. But he was looking a bit nervous. And a bit timid also. He was trying to chip pucks in, and he was sort of backing up, like not wanting to get the hit. He's just a little guy. You got to remember that. Now he's playing against men. He's playing against a lot bigger, tougher, stronger guys than he was in university. And that's going to be an adjustment for him. He's going to have to learn to avoid those hits. You know, he's not. You don't want him going in and getting driven into the boards hard. He doesn't have the body to survive it. So he's looked a little nervous, a little timid, lacking a little bit of confidence. But he's still shooting the puck. I mean, but he's fanned on, like, the first 4 or 5 games. He fanned on 3 or 4 shots, which you never see a guy like that do. So it might be playing in his head just a little bit that he's not used to going through a slump like this. But Tyler Toffoli had a good quote when I asked him the other day about it. And he said, I've gone 12, 13, 14 games without scoring in the NHL. It happens to everybody. But it probably hasn't happened to Cole Caulfield a lot in his career. So this is an adjustment for him. But like so many goal scorers, I think once he gets that first one, he'll settle down, and probably some other ones will follow.
4 games on the West Coast. Do you think we see Montembeault?
Ooh, that's a good question. I personally would, as long as Jake Allen is not tired and it's earlier in the season, he shouldn't be. I'd play him, I think, all 4 games. It's Mike Farber had a great line on Twitter when Montembeault let in the 5 goals. He said it was the full Montembeault. And I don't know. The Canadiens are in a situation like they were with Carey Price before they got Jake Allen. Like, you put your backup goalie in and you sort of watch the game like this.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the case with Montembeault. And the fact they're 1-5 at this stage, I don't know. I would ride Jake Allen for now.
Stu, here's a question that probably none of us have an answer to. Maybe not even Carey Price, but it comes from Dan Desjardins, who's watching right now via social media. And his question is, in your opinion, do you think we're without Price for the season? So I guess basically he's asking us what our gut tells us and not what our head tells us, because we don't know. Nobody knows, probably not even Carey. But Marc Bergevin told us that Carey would be in the player assistance program for at least a month. What does your gut tell you, Stu? Because obviously none of us know.
Yeah. To backtrack just quick for a second, I mean, the Canes do have back-to-back afternoon games next Saturday and Sunday. So
that's right, yeah.
Probably playing one of those games. But for Carey Price, I'd be surprised if he comes back this season. And if he does, I think it would be very late in the season. Whatever the issues are he's dealing with, if they were enough for him to have to leave the team early in the season, when this team is really counting on him, you have to, and again, I'm speculating here, this 30 days is going to be enough for him to be back 100%. And don't forget, he was still recovering from the knee surgery. It's not like he was in training camp and practicing and all of a sudden he left. He hasn't had a practice. He's been on the ice, I think, twice. So it's not like after, he's not on the ice now, I wouldn't think. So even whenever he does come back, you got to think he's 2 weeks to a month away from being ready to play. And the other thing that I'd factor into this a little bit is, Shea Weber's sitting at home now, as I mentioned. I wrote the other day, I was surprised Shea Weber didn't show up for the home opener.
Yeah.
Well, I don't expect him to be in Montreal all season, but he's still the captain.
I was very disappointed. And I know a lot of people don't agree with me. So hear me out on this one as well. I know that Shea Weber's a great guy. Everyone knows that Shea Weber's a stand-up guy. Everyone knows that Shea Weber's a huge leader in the Canadiens. And everyone knows that Shea Weber would not intentionally want to disappoint or disrespect anyone. But I believe, unless there was an incredible family emergency, which I would understand, and we haven't been told that there was, so I would imagine that there wasn't, I think Shea Weber underestimated the importance of the captain being there for the home opener. And I know the way the Canadiens are approaching it, they believe Shea Weber's career is over and he'll never be back, and I get that. But until he's no longer the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, he is the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. You talked about the Canadiens being a religion. I talked about them being an institution. The home opener was very important for a lot of people. It's not to the end of the world for me. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But I believe he underestimated the importance of him being there, and a lot of fans felt disrespected and disappointed by it. And I, too, was disappointed that he wasn't there.
I think fans would have appreciated seeing him. We haven't seen him or heard from him since news broke that his career might be over. The 4-game homestand, I thought he might be here, be around the team, and then they're flying back to Seattle. He lives out in Kelowna, and fly back, and you don't expect him to hang around here all year when he's not playing. But I really thought he would have been at the Bell Center for the home opener for the player introductions. He chose not to for whatever the reasons are. He wasn't there, but yeah, maybe he did underestimate it. And the Canadiens are sort of sending a mixed message saying that, his career's over probably, but we're not going to name another captain. Well, then why not name another captain if you think his career's over? And if he
because there's that one chance, right? The doctor told him, Shea, if you get operated, we're going to have to do a fusion. you'll never be able to play pro hockey again. You'll never be able to skate again. He's taking the time off, hoping that by resting his foot, his ankle, and all that, at one point, he's going to jump on the ice and give it a try and hope that the doctors were wrong and that rest was able to cure it. But everyone doubts it. And obviously, the doctors don't think that he can.
But so name an interim captain until he returns. In my like, Brendan Gallagher is the only guy wearing a full-time A, so I guess he's the de facto captain for the year. As I wrote in a column this week, in the room when things are bad and you're 0-5, Gallagher's like, do I speak? Does Suzuki speak? Does Petrie speak? Who's the guy? And that stands. And as Bergevin said, Weber used to just be able to give guys a look, sort of like Mark Messier, right?
Yeah.
When you're not around the team, you can't give them that look. Who else is giving that look? It's a bizarre situation. Bergevin said he has a plan for Weber moving forward, and he'll let the media know when he. What is it? There's just it's a question mark out there, and along with the question mark of whether Mark Bergevin is going to be back or not. So when you're losing,
it's probably a cell phone plan so that they can talk while a long distance while one's in BC and the other one's in Montreal. Anyway, listen, let's end it on a high. For the first time this season, the Canadians win in the regular season. It's a bleu, blanc, rouge kind of day. Stu Cowan, ça sent la coupe again. Montreal is so much more fun when the Canadians win.
It is. I have people say, you're negative and you like when the Canadians lose. My job's to cover the team. When they play bad, I write they play bad. When they play good, I write they play good. Trust me, it's a lot more fun covering a winning hockey team.
You're right, 100%. Listen, Stu Cowan and Tony Marinaro are not negative. It's just at times the reality is negative. So by us spitting facts, we sound negative. We're not negative. At least I hope I'm not. We'll talk to you again. We'll do it again sometime. Hey, let's try and make this like a regular thing on Sundays, man. I love going live with you, and we'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. Take it easy, bud.
Always fun.
All right.
Have a good day. Take care, guys.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Have a great Sunday. Tell your friends about this podcast. It is sick, just like its host.